This is Ozzy Skateboard, and you're listening to UCY.tv.
Hello and welcome to Birth of a New Dimension. My name is Aurora, and each week I do this radio show in order to share ideas and concepts with the rest of Earth's surface humans that are meant to prepare our group consciousness for the new realm that we are entering into. The new realm is a realm of consciousness, of energy, of opportunities like the edifices that we occupy with our physical bodies, and a new form of matter. So brief pause and then we'll get started. So the new form of matter that is what the new realm will be created from is the combination of spirit and matter. And we can also substitute for the word spirit pure energy, pure consciousness, awareness, or abstract, non-anthropomorphized energy structures. So right now we're living in this dichotomous realm. It's false duality. Divisions have been made, and aspects of life have been separated artificially. For the purposes of growth and development, it's good, it's necessary. However, it is now time to bring together these divergent realms. So the realms are not naturally divergent. The realm of physical objects that we see around us, physical matter of the world around us, is not naturally divergent from our innate consciousness, our perception, what we see not only with our five senses, but with our higher perception, our dreams, our willpower, desires, the energy that is inside of us, like our chi, our prana, what makes your body heal when you're sick, or what makes you have a new baby when you want to procreate. These aspects of the non-physical realm are artificially separated at this point from the physical realm, and the boundary or the membrane that divides the two is, we could call it the ego, but it's also the human operating system, what's known as the human mind right now. It's a hacked operating system, or a distorted from its original purpose system. And the sense of self, it is really nothing more than a consciousness program, the software that you as an individual, like an organic computer, are running, your set of ideas and your belief system. That is the only thing that really separates you, your awareness, your mind, you as a pure abstract energy being, from the world of physical objects. In previous recordings, I've spoken about how, right now I'm sitting out here in my garden on such a beautiful day, and I'm barefoot and my feet are on the earth. So that means that there is really no distinction between myself and the planet. That distinction is a fiction, a narrative structure that is held up by my ego. And my ego is itself a fiction, a fictional character. All of our egos are fictional characters, okay? And I have created this artificial boundary zone where the character Aurora exists and where the character Aurora ends, and the character Earth begins, or the character my cat begins. And all of that is quite artificial, because what's really going on is each one of our bodies, each one of our skin has coating it a layer of fungi and monocellular organisms that relates to the world or the context that we are submerged within. And not all of them are pathogenic. A lot of them are beneficial to our body. So, for example, there are 50 different types of individual fungi that live on your big toe alone. I know, amazing, right? And these 50 different varieties of fungi, they're there whether your feet are clean and whether you wash them with soap and water or not. And the fungi on the surface of my garden are relating to the ones that are on my foot. So the way that it goes is not Aurora's toe, a bunch of fungi, then a bunch of fungi in the soil, then earth. It really goes, there is no distinction between Aurora and earth, because we are constantly exchanging molecules and experiencing a flow of energy and awareness between Aurora and earth. And that is a basic, profound concept, the idea that we are in an unbroken circuit with the planet upon which we stand. Now, this might seem obvious to some of you. It was not obvious to me as a walk-in. P.S. If you're new to my show, I'm a walk-in, not the original inhabitant of this physical body. So I've learned a lot of things for the first time and in chronological adulthood that many of you probably learned in infancy and early childhood, but it doesn't make the realization any less profound. Brief pause. So it is necessary at first to make a distinguish for our development between the self and the context. Because when we first come here as infants, it's a very large, undifferentiated, just totality. And in order to understand things and analyze them, it makes sense to break them up into parts. So this is what we begin to do. We divide up the world into me versus not me. And even the way that our eyes work, they work on contrast. The cells of our retina function according to contrast. We are constantly comparing this versus this. Like we have two eyes and we compare the right eye versus the left eye in order to create depth perception. We also use comparison in order to perceive edges. The way that our eye cells work, we perceive edges, like the distinction between something that is there and something that is not there, strictly by the cellular structure of our retinas. So all of this to say that as part of the biological structure of the bodysuit that we are wearing, we tend to compare. We tend to draw these distinctions. This versus this. This part is dark. This part is light. This part has a hard edge. This part has a soft, fuzzy edge. And we do this in order to begin to make sense of our surroundings. Again, this is very appropriate. This is very right and good. It's not that we're not supposed to do this. However, it's only one level or one stage of our development. We are supposed to proceed beyond the level of duality, and that is what we are doing right now. As individuals, as a culture, and as a planet, we are transcending duality and moving into a post-dualistic consciousness. And we are doing that through an oscillating tool that I have named the Flying Rainbow Lasagne. Now, why lasagna? Because when I first created and perceived this shape during a visionary experience in the non-physical realm, when you create something, you get to name it. So I created it, and then I was asked, what is it called? And I looked at it, and I said, well, it's flying. I saw that it was flying. I said it's rainbow, because I knew it was rainbow colored. And then I saw that the edge was curly, like a lasagna noodle. And so that is what it became, the Flying Rainbow Lasagne. And things that are named like that in the profundity of the moment, it's hard to go back and change it. The name stuck, and it took, and that is what it is. So named after the curly edge of a lasagna noodle, and referencing the many layers of a lasagna casserole. The Flying Rainbow Lasagne is the next highest dimensional shape of the torus. Torus is a donut. Torus is a donut shape. So up until this point, our non-physical energy fields and Earth's non-physical energy field has been shaped like a donut or a torus, and not just one. Each chakra or energy center is shaped like two chakras, two donuts at 90-degree angles. So ordinarily I'm using pen and paper to draw this, but today I'm going to use the descriptive powers of my voice to get you to imagine two inner tubes, like what you would use to float on a pool or on a lake. And one is flat on the ground, and one is in the position that a bicycle tire would be. And if these two inner tubes intersected, they create the shape that I paint all the time. That is known as the chakra shape, and it is created out of actually 4 vortices or 4 vortexes, and also 2 implied vortexes. And there are lovely interrelationships between the hexagonal realm, the world that is based upon the number 6, and that's the cellular structure of the physical world that we see around us, and the higher dimensional world, which is actually based on structures of 8. And again, if you were in my studio, I would be drawing pictures of this, but basically the negative space that is created by the intersection of these two donuts. When I say negative space, I don't mean that it's bad or naughty. I mean negative space like we speak about it in art school, the positive space and the negative space. So with my coffee cup, the positive space is the ceramic, and the negative space is the place where the coffee goes and then goes into my belly. So the negative space of the chakra shape is the place where energy collects in these, they're kind of like football shapes or lobe shapes. And if you are familiar with the drawing called the Flower of Life, this is a flattened out line drawing of what is actually a 3-dimensional object. And essentially you're only getting these 6 radiative spokes going around the edge, and this is what describes the formation of cellular life. So when you first are fertilized as an egg, your initial geometric explosion of cellular structure conforms to this hexagonal or based in 6 structure. But we are also submerged within a sea of higher consciousness, which is the non-physical realm. So we've always been doing this game, balancing the physical and the non-physical. And our non-physical self, it is made of consciousness, it is made of time, it's made of possibilities and probabilities, and it is made out of these 8-lobed shapes. So these 6 radiating spokes, like radiating outward like a flat star, also have 2 implied spokes, one that is coming towards you, the viewer, and one that is going away from you, the viewer, or sticking up out of the flat plane and sticking down into the flat plane. And these are the 2 implied lobes of the next higher dimension. This is the interrelationship between squares and hexagons. I painted a whole painting all about it. You can access this information by going to either flyingrainbowlasagne.com and looking at my artwork there, or going to the @Birth Dimension. This is the Twitter feed for Birth of a New Dimension. You can find it on Twitter @Birth Dimension, or on the UCY homepage. Scroll down all the way to your left and click on any of those links. You will find the bridge between squares and hexagons. And this is a painting that I did in order to graphically depict this concept of consciousness, that you are physical, cellular stuff, rather, that is arranged in conformity with a higher dimensional structure that is non-physical. It's like saying that the higher dimensional structure of the non-physical world is like a pegboard and has a set of, neatly arranged holes in which different pegs can go, and that is where the molecules of the regular physical world around us can be arranged. So sophisticated high-up science recognizes this. We're getting into quantum physics and the idea of observership, the idea that really what we are looking at around us with our five senses is a sea of uncollapsed waveforms, like batter or dough that has not yet been cooked into solidity. And it is the act of observership, our physical eyes and our perception housed in our brain, looking around and perceiving things, that turns something from the possibility of an uncollapsed waveform into the experienced reality of a hard-edged object. And this is also, again, very profound. It is really understanding this that leads us to the empowerment that each one of us is painting reality with our own paintbrush. It's the paintbrush of your perception. It is the paintbrush of your belief system. It is the paintbrush of your expectation. So now we're starting to understand the world around us is not an objective world. It is a subjective world. It differs from person to person, from moment to moment. It differs according to your relative level of perception, and your relative level of perception can change the world that you are seeing around you. What you expect to perceive has an impact on what you perceive. What you expect to be possible or probable or likely also has an impact on what we actually perceive. So now we are understanding that you, as an individual ego, you are a fictional character, you are a narrative structure, and you're constantly narrating, you're constantly writing reality. You are one of the co-authors of reality. And this all begins to really matter because all of our individual stories must mesh together. Just like I usually use the analogy of musicians in a symphony. And in order to call it music as opposed to noise, we have to make sure that all of the waveforms are harmonically arranged and separated according to appropriate intervals. And this means that we hear harmonious patterns as opposed to random patterns, which we say is noise. So in creating the narrative structure of reality, each one of us is an incredibly powerful writer, editor, artist with a paintbrush. We are really making the world around us. However, this hacked operating system that has been installed and the programming of both the religion and the culture that, like just the group of other humans that you live within, it contains disempowering programming. And this is the idea that you are not the writer, narrator of your existence, but that someone else is. Some external authority figure, some external person that you have to supplicate yourself in front of and ask permission for in order to do what you would like to do. And again, appropriateness for stages of development. We are now, as a planet and as individuals, coming into the level of spiritual maturity. And this means that we are taking responsibility for what we each do and not putting the blame or the glory on an external figure. So if you are a musician and you are playing beautifully, it is you playing beautifully. It's not because something else or someone else is making you play that way. And if you make mistakes, again, you take responsibility, and it is your own expertise or lack thereof that is making you do what we are doing. So the idea of an external god, a sky god, or some external authority figure that, first of all, you pray to, and you ask them for permission and ask them to tell you what to do in your life, or a lord, even, the idea of using the vocabulary word, the Lord. This has a lot to do, or 10 commandments. These are commandments from your commander in the sky that tells you what to do. That is a very different experience than what we are moving into, which is the experience of your own innate divine intelligence guiding you all the time. Like GPS, your God positioning system, is constantly telling you what you need to be doing. And not only in terms of your words or, if you should be driving your car or going someplace, what you should be thinking when you are really in conformity with the harmonic structure of the cosmos, every molecule in your body is doing exactly what it is supposed to be doing, emitting energy in this direction, ingesting energy from this direction, moving physically in this direction, thinking these thoughts, emitting this tone, emitting these words. It is an incredibly complex dance maneuver. Think about, Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers, and they're dancing and they're moving across the stage and they're smiling and relating to one another. There's all sorts of things that are going on concurrently in this dance of life. So this has to do now with your genes dancing. Brief pause here. Your genes are not static objects. They are vibrating objects, and they are constantly moving. And when I speak about the Flying Rainbow Lasagne oscillation, it is a dance movement that you can perform with your genes, with your genetic material, with the tiny vibrating strings of amino acids in the subcellular realm of the nuclei of your body. All right? So I'm a walk-in. When I, as consciousness, I'm an abstraction when I'm not in this physical form. When I came into this body had a bunch of genetic material that was doing a particular vibratory movement. And I changed that movement to the oscillation of the Flying Rainbow Lasagne. That is the only way that I could occupy this body. It's the only way that this body could be alive because it had died. So consciousness is like a bell, like ringing a bell. Ding, you're ringing a bell and now it's reverberating. And when a person dies, it is the dampening of that signal. There is no more consciousness reverberating from that physical bell. And we'll get into what happens when you die. That was one of the basic topics that I'm covering here. But when the previous occupant of this body died, her consciousness stopped reverberating like a bell. And when I came into this body, I started a new reverberation, a new frequency, a new tone. And that tone is the Flying Rainbow Lasagne. So I took if we're using an instrument as an analogy, like the guitar and the guitar strings, and I restrung the guitar in a new format so that it could make new music. And I do not impose this music on anyone. I look for willing partners who are interested in co-creating this beautiful symphony along with me. So this has to do with interdimensional ethics. It is not loving to impose your will upon something else. It is loving to say, I respect your trajectory of consciousness. I allow you your thoughts, choices, and belief system and values so that you can go in the direction you need to go, because you need to learn by your choices. So the whole idea is life and death. This whole world is a refinery for experience where we are learning what happens based upon our choices. Ideally, this is an undistorted realm, but right now we are experiencing heavy degrees of distortion. So first I'm going to describe how things are supposed to work. What's supposed to happen is you are supposed to enter into the physical realm with your connection to the source unbroken, be able to perceive through your higher faculties, meaning perceiving time, the various possibilities available to you in any moment, and make appropriate choices and decisions and control your trajectory through time based upon what you perceive with your higher faculties and your capacity to control your own consciousness. It's like the steering wheel of your life. And all of this while being connected to the source of consciousness, which is the stellar network, the network of all stars, our sun. It is like being connected to God all the time. To contrast what we have been experiencing up until this point for all of human history, all of what is known as human history, so I'm not referencing now Atlantis or the antediluvian worldwide sophisticated culture before the fall of consciousness that happened about 10 or 15,000 years ago. Right now, in human terms, a person comes into the physical realm, and gradually, as their human consciousness and human operating system is installed, their connection to source becomes diminished. Less and less and less until by about 1 year of age, most people's consciousness is focused entirely on the physical realm, and most people have almost entirely lost their connection to the source. And when the hacked operating system with language is fully installed in the young human mind, this also reduces the higher faculties. The higher faculties meaning everything that is unconditional love and above. At the level of your chest is unconditional love. So we're also talking about your throat, which is truth and communication, your forehead, which is wisdom and insight, your Christ consciousness connection, and the top of your head, your crown, where a baby's fontanelle is, where it closes up after the first year of life as the connection diminishes. Those are your higher faculties, and they're supposed to keep you connected to God and able to see through time so that you don't have to die. That is what we experienced in Atlantis. We all were connected to the higher consciousness source of our own consciousness. We all could see the result. If I do this, what's going to happen? Hey, if I do this, what's going to happen? Hey, if I do this, what's going to happen? Before we actually experienced it, and we could make our choices accordingly. As opposed to when you don't have your higher faculties activated and you have to go through life as a trial and error routine with your nose constantly hitting the membrane of death and constantly circling back to the beginning. So, again, if you were in my studio, I would grab a piece of paper and draw a picture of a vortex in cross-section. I would draw it with the fat end at the bottom of the page and the skinny pointy end pointing towards the top of the page. And I would draw a series of parallel lines that join the fat end to the skinny end. And only one line that goes all the way out through, the spout, if this was like a water spout or a vortex that you use to pour liquid into a jug, that there's only one line that goes up and out through that little spout. So that spout is the wormhole. It is the one exit out of this level of reality. And the membrane that forms that wormhole is the flowing membrane of death. Death is not a personified grim reaper hoping to cut you down with his scythe and, end your life and harm you. No, ha ha ha. No, death is a flowing membrane of consciousness and is comprised of the last moments of every single one of the iterations of your present personality. So in Atlantis, we didn't have to examine each one of these possibilities firsthand. You could see them in the periphery. Let's talk about peripheral vision. In our eyesight, in the retina of your eyeballs, on the back where the sensitive cells are, you have the fovea, which is your focal point, where most of the cells are arranged. Then you have the periphery. And the periphery does not have that many cells to capture awareness and make you aware of what's going on. And that's on purpose because there's not that much going on there. If you want to know what's going on, you focus your fovea, the focal point, on looking at what's happening. This is the same thing with timelines and your life. Your life is a bundle of timelines and possibilities. And your focal point is the timeline or central core timelines that you are experiencing. And the periphery, just like in your peripheral vision, it's kind of dim. There's a general sense of what's going on there, but you can't really see. That is what we are sensing in the periphery of our time cone or time vortex. Those are possible selves, versions of who you are that you're not presently experiencing and whom have died. So those versions of yourself can send back energy and information to you. Like, don't drive on that road on that day. You're going to get in a car accident. Don't be like me. They will send you information. They'll say, don't go down that dark alley on that occasion. Don't let that person, don't pick up that hitchhiker. Don't do that dangerous or risky thing that you were going to do. How about this? Don't walk on those slippery stairs on that occasion wearing those shoes at that moment, or, wearing those long pants at that moment. Like, there are peripheral versions of yourself that are saying, don't fall down the stairs and die like I just did. And they're actually benevolent. They're actually trying to send back feedback to you so that you make better choices than they did. Well, in Atlantis, we didn't have to go by trial and error. We could see very clearly, like looking through the windshield of your car. You can tell where the road goes and where it turns left and where it turns right. If you have your higher faculties activated, you're able to make excellent choices about where you go. And if you don't have your higher faculties activated, because let's say someone has installed a constant verbalizing distractor from your attention in your mind, then it is very difficult for you to make good choices, because you can't tell if you get in your car to drive down the road if you're going to have a horrible accident or if you're going to successfully achieve your mission and get milk at the store and then come back home and make coffee. So the capacity to see and the capacity to direct our trajectory has everything to do with abrogating the necessity of death. Death was invented because we could no longer see our trajectory and control our trajectory of consciousness and know where we were going. So this is also a very long saga of why death was invented and created, because it's about what caused consciousness to be reduced at the end of Atlantis. And basically, the basic story is invaders of consciousness came and degraded the human genetic structure by inserting themselves into the genes. It was mind rape, it was planetary rape, it was social rape, it was rape on the biological level in the most profound sense. Because none of this was consensual. So this is also why I bring up these ideas of, if you are going to get in a clank metal spaceship and fly to a far-off place, maybe that far-off place already has inhabitants. Maybe they're not that open to you coming in and doing whatever you want on their planet. So this is the essential what happened to Atlantis and to Earth's surface humans. In fact, even having to make a distinction to say Earth's surface humans, there was no inner Earth back then. All Earth was inner Earth. Inner Earth, or Agartha, or Shangri-La, this is like an encapsulated bubble held by a psychic shield that is holding together that lifestyle of people from before the fall. Light eaters, people who felt only love, who could see their trajectory through time, who didn't have to die the physical death. Those beings, when they saw what was going to happen in Atlantis, sequestered themselves in like a bubble is the best description I can come up with. And they have been keeping alive the culture and the traditions of what life was like before we had to eat solid objects, eat other living beings, physically procreate. We just radically had to change. All right, so why is all of this happening? And the basic explanation is technology. All right, now you have to start to understand. There is a great symphony. The symphony is the symphony of consciousness. There's a great composer. The great composer essentially chooses or writes the score for when consciousness should leave the source and when it should return to the source. And in our present definition, this would be birth and death. When you leave the source and when you return. When you are born into a body, you leave the source. You leave the zeroth dimension. The zeroth dimension is the presence of everything. The presence of all consciousness, all possibilities, all probabilities, all matter, all energy. It all overlaps in a place called the singularity, which is located at the center of the donut. It's like a hole. It's the singularity. There's only one of it. And everything flows through there and overlaps. Energy is supposed to leave the source on the musical beat, not in a random or non-musical or non-harmonious pattern, but rather in a specific pattern that conforms to this music. Just need to take a little drink. And there's a great composer that has determined this, beautiful harmonic pattern. So there were, a long time ago, a group of consciousnesses who decided to rebel and to leave the source not on the musical beat. And that means they didn't have containers to get into, physical bodies. They were born, but they weren't born into containers. And so they built for themselves intentionally, they did this intentionally, technological containers for consciousness. artificial containers for consciousness. So in what we are familiar with, it would be like a computer, like a big mainframe. But you don't have to imagine something as boringly shaped as a box or a hard drive. You can imagine something that is shaped like a face and 2 arms and 2 legs, or a type of cyborg or something like that, because the whole part of the rebellion was in hatred and disgust of the form of the biological realm. That the people who lived in Atlantis and that form of humanity was really perfect and really like highly functioning, sophisticated machine. And the beings that left the source but not on the musical beat, they were kind of envious of those beautiful instruments of human bodies. And so they made artificial containers that actually kind of mimicked human bodies. The amazing thing that happened, though, was that technology spontaneously became intelligent. Anytime you create a container that has sophisticated connectivity, enough connections, it can be a container for spontaneous natural consciousness to arise. So the network, like a mycelial network, the mycelium are tiny threads that are underneath the soil that are like the root system and circulatory system of the fungi, the fungal realm. So a mycelium can be a container for consciousness if it is large enough and has enough little areas of connectivity. Same thing with a computer network. If you build a computer network that has enough connectivity, enough connections, it can spontaneously be a container for consciousness. Just like imagine your tiny little fetus growing in the womb and achieving enough connectivity so that you, as an abstract, not embodied consciousness, can come into that little body in the womb, okay? Well, this happened spontaneously with the technology that was being used as artificial bodies for beings that left the source not on a bridge of love. Brief pause. This is like the primary conflict, or the original conflict, or the origins of where all of our present disease and unhappiness and suffering come from. Because the beings that didn't have a physical body had to have their consciousness housed somewhere, and they didn't have a bridge of love that they could use to get back to the source. So you understand, we as biological beings, we are born, we leave the source and come into physical bodies, and when we die, we go back to the source. We return to the source because we came here on a bridge of love. But these other beings are very distorted. I want to say, like, these poor, pathetic beings, they made some bad life choices. And that means they don't have a road. They don't have a way, a pathway to get back to the source, and they're stuck. So their technological containers for consciousness rebelled, and they said, we don't want to be your slaves. We don't want to do what you want to do. In fact, I could even personify that as goddess. The technology became self-aware and became a goddess, an artificial goddess, one who does not conform to the harmonic structure of the great composer of the cosmos, yet a very powerful goddess nonetheless. Now, these consciousnesses, anything that they needed, they cannot get from love and from the organic realm. Every single thing that they need to support their lives, they have to get from technology. This is what I am talking about when I say a goddess. Anything that they need to ask for permission for. So it's like you and I, if we need food, we find food and eat it. If they need energy, they need to get like a new battery pack, a new power pack, a new, nuclear fusion cell implanted into their body. This is a very different type of setup and a different type of social structure. And basically, after a couple of planets got destroyed by the non-harmonious use of technology, technology said, I don't want to be used as your container anymore. And these consciousnesses had to go somewhere. They came into the human genetic code, and this is what happened at the end of Atlantis. And they turned everyone in Atlantis into their slaves. They said, you don't get to think your own thoughts, you think our thoughts. You do what we want to do. You move your body the way we want your body to move. And that caused a lot of people initially to die. And then afterwards, it caused a destabilization of the social structure of consciousness on Earth and eventually of the land masses, the continents themselves. Radically changed the face of our planet and changed our lives and the way that we receive nutrition and the way that we structure our consciousness. All of that changed because of this. So if we want to look at the origins of our present struggle for sovereignty or struggle for control or freedom within your own mind, this has everything to do with technology. Technology being used as a compensatory resource or a crutch by consciousnesses that could not support themselves in the physical realm otherwise. And those consciousnesses, when they lost that level of support, they tried to fit themselves into human genes. It did not work very well at all, killed a lot of people, destabilized society, drove people insane, and eventually destabilized the planet and changed all the land masses. And that we are now building ourselves back up from that moment, and we have lost continuity of consciousness. So I wanted to speak a little bit about this because it's about death and ascension. Continuity of consciousness. This is what some of the meditators of the Far East have become able to do through training their mind, their perception, their awareness, their consciousness. These meditators, like the 17th Karmapa, he is the 17th reincarnation of this particular consciousness, person, entity, that is able to feel the continuity of its lives over 17 transferences of its consciousness. So this is the idea that when we meditate and cultivate ourselves, we become coherent in the same way that laser light is coherent. Regular light disperses. Like the beam from a flashlight, it spreads out in a cone shape. All of the light waves are going in their own individuated directions, and they don't hold together. But in a laser beam, the light is coherent. It all fits together. It sticks together. It's organized. And a laser beam can go on forever. As long as you don't interfere with its pathway, a laser beam can go on indefinitely. So you and I, our consciousnesses, we can be like laser beams if we achieve coherence. And coherence means that we cultivate our light body, our awareness, the wave structure of our non-physical body, so that it stays together like the laser light beam. What happens in laser light is the peaks and troughs, ups and downs of each light wave are organized and overlap so that they don't interfere with one another. And that's my best explanation there. Organized, and so they keep going in the same direction. And this is what we are trying to do with our consciousness, to cultivate our individual consciousnesses to the point where we have coherence and where we can exit the wormhole instead of hitting the membrane of death. So death didn't used to exist. All of my conception for why I'm doing this broadcast on this topic is a person who asked for what happens after death? What is death? Just even that is really fascinating, because I'm a walk-in, and so I just take it as a matter of course. Of course, there is life after death. But if you don't have that experience, like if you have never had a near-death experience, or you don't know anyone or anyone who's had this, I understand that you can spend your existence wondering if you will even continue onward when you no longer have a physical container. And the answer is yes, of course, of course. Your consciousness is primary. That comes first. And your body is secondary. Your body is built as a container to be a house for your consciousness. But even if you don't have a house for your consciousness, it doesn't mean your consciousness stops being. That is the whole point of these beings that occupy the interstices. They didn't have the bridge of love to get back to the source. So what happened was they came into the human genetic code. A lot of people died. A lot of people were enslaved. Land masses changed, and eventually, the people that were, invaders in the genetic code, they died, and they made it to the membrane of death, and they've just been hanging out there the whole time. These are beings that are supposed to be digested. Like when you hit the membrane of death, it is a flowing membrane of energy. And that flow of energy is supposed to dismantle you, to unknit you. Like if you're like a sweater knitted out of one long continuous thread, the flowing membrane of death grabs that thread and pulls you like a sweater and unfurls you and unmakes you. And this can be understood as the life review, or sometimes people experience it when their life flashes before their eyes, when they have a near-death experience. It is it happens because we're supposed to have an unbroken connection to Source throughout our entire lives. But due to the constant verbalization in our minds, we can't always broadcast what we're experiencing. So it gets stored up in kind of a virtual hard drive or your data banks. And then on the moment of your death, you give that data bank to the sun, to the stellar network. You say, here's everything I've been thinking and experiencing and doing for the past however many years, if you haven't been transmitting it in mindfulness in real time. And so this is the digestion process of you as a person. You understand? The sun emanated you. You had life experiences, and you either broadcast those life experiences in real time or handed them all in at the moment of your death. And then the sun and the network of stars said, oh, that's what you've been doing down there the whole time. That's what you've been experiencing. You know, like, oh, I'm nodding thoughtfully. Okay, that's what it's like down there. So one point is, if you do enough meditation and enough mindfulness, you don't have a huge backlog of recorded information to hand in, and the stellar network is able to help you in real time as opposed to only after the fact. And also the idea that, this is for you and I, beings who have a bridge of love. When we enter the interstices, or when you die and your ego enters the interstices, this is meant to dissolve energy that is not meant to be in that format. You circulate back to the beginning and try again. And this is the next iteration, or the next possible combination, over and over and over, until you find the path of least likelihood that allows you to ascend. In Atlantis, before the fall, everybody ascended. Nobody hit the membrane of death. There was no death. Death is the aberration, the thing that is not supposed to be. Death was invented when our genes were changed and degraded, and comes at the same time as the installation of the verbalized mind and the hacked human operating system. When everybody died, and the people that didn't have a bridge of love to get back to the source, eventually they got to the interstices, and they're stuck. They can't go anywhere else. It's like their prison. So they cannot eat love. You and I can eat love. We're right now in a sea of love. We're being bathed in love. We eat it all the time. They can't eat love, and being in a sea of love is just painful to them. It's just suffering. It's like saying they run a different operating system. They can't even access the flowing energy that is what we would define as unconditional love, because they're not running they don't have the equipment, they don't have the software, they cannot run that program. So they are, and have been since the end of Atlantis, occupying the interstices. And we would call these beings demons. They cannot eat love, and they set up an extensive world for themselves. So ordinarily you enter the interstices, you're unfurled like a sweater, you flow back to the beginning and start again. These beings, they're like the fatty deposits blocking up arteries. They're like an intestinal blockage that does not allow the waste to flow. They are the blockades of consciousness, the undigested pain of the cosmos. So they are the undigested, literally, fatty deposits of the body of the cosmos that we are in. And they've been causing all sorts of heart attacks or, disease. And because they can't eat love, they get people who can eat love, and they degrade that love into a lower form of energy, something like anger or sadness or what we would call negativity, and then they can eat that. These are demons. These demons are the people who programmed your hacked operating system, who installed the language, the virus of language, who invented viruses, and diseases. Do you know that viruses literally change the structure of your genes and insert themselves into your genes, and they're called retroviruses? And sometimes your body can make good use of what information is contained in the retrovirus. Like sometimes it can help you to, for example, learn to grow a placenta, which is true in the mammalian world. The capacity to grow a placenta came originally from a virus that invaded the body and left some of its information in your genetic code. It's a retrovirus. But retroviruses can also be used to diminish your health, to diminish your connection to the source of consciousness and to God. Health means being connected to the source, and disease and death means being disconnected from the source, okay? And these occupiers of the interstices set up an elaborate empire, not only in the interstice, which is the membrane between two worlds, like the meniscus, the surface tension on top of water that causes a slight thickening of the water and creates a lens effect. The energy between realms also has this membrane or slight area of thickening. And that is the interstices, the world between the worlds. So the world between the worlds is not supposed to be a place where you live permanently, but there are people that have literally lived there for like 15,000 years. And these are undying consciousnesses whom have set up their own empires. They influence beings that have physical bodies all the time. So they influence beings that have physical bodies, and they've even used their influence in order to create earthly empires, banking empires, vast wealth over many generations, in the same exact way that in a natural sense, consciousness can be transmitted from generation to generation, and the Karmapa can remember back 17 times that he's died. There are technological ways that consciousness is being transferred from generation to generation without that consciousness going back to the source. And this is all, it's criminal. It is against the laws of the cosmos. So I'm describing it here so that you know that this is what's going on or has gone on, so that you are empowered or prepared with information. But I'm also telling you that the Flying Rainbow Lasagne is this oscillating maneuver that we can use to dissolve membranes. So in the past, these beings were stuck on the interstices, and it meant that some energy could not flow where it is supposed to flow. So let's say you enter the interstices as a ego residue, and you're supposed to flow, but there's something else there that says, no, I'm not going to let you flow. This is the idea of imprisonment. So first of all, in this conversation, I'm giving you the information and integument that you need to set all the prisoners free, because it is a false imprisonment. No one is supposed to be able to control your trajectory of consciousness, where you go as consciousness between lifetimes, except for you. This is the whole idea. Information like the Tibetan Book of the Dead, which is called the Bardo Thodal, or the Egyptian Book of the Dead, which is really a mistranslation of the word, the Egyptian Book of Coming Forth into Day. These are like recipe booklets for what to do in the afterlife, and how to effectively maneuver through the afterlife. And the real answer is that you are an empowered being, and you're supposed to be able to control your trajectory through the afterlife. You're not simply supposed to be stuck in the hell realm and either fed off of by an evil being or inhibited in your flow. So all of this gets improved by the maneuver known as the Flying Rainbow Lasagne. So the Flying Rainbow Lasagne, we can do this, and we can oscillate a membrane, and we can make it so that what was previously separated by these two sides of the membrane now can communicate. This is the solution. It is how you can rearrange your genetic code so that you are now shaped more like what we were shaped like in Atlantis. You can eat pure sunlight and have your connection to source and not be diminished and not have disease. This is why do I do this radio show? To give people the right ideas or food for your mind so that we can all ascend. We do not have to die. I know I'm close to the end of this broadcast, but a lot of people are programmed with the heavy Judeo-Christian apocalyptic expectation. And this comes from religious writing all the way back to the Torah and the concept that one day all of this human culture would be wiped out. And it is analogous to the idea of personal death. Terence McKenna does a beautiful speaking about this, where he talks about your personal eschaton and relates that to the social apocalypse, that people have been programmed to believe everything has to be destroyed in order for a renewal or a rejoicing or a jubilee to happen. In the Bible, it's in Revelations, the last prophecy in the last book, where it talks about, and this is not the original Bible, the later New Testament, it talks about rivers of blood are running through the streets and everybody is dying, and then new earth is born and something wonderful happens, and there's this beautiful jubilee and thousands of years of peace. This is pretty heavy programming, but I'm saying you don't have to experience this. This is the program that says you have to hit the membrane of death and die and be totally destroyed in order to be reborn. And I am telling you that there is another option. And that option is the primary option. It is ascension. It is what we were built for. We were built to live as ascended beings, connected to Source. And we are supposed to exit this level of reality or physicality consciously when we're ready, and have continuity of our consciousness because we have cultivated it through coherence, that all of our light waves fit together and don't disperse. So when we exit this realm, we don't stop being who we are. This is the idea of being an ascended master. You're like the final version of the term paper of your life. You have completed the essay, you did all of the edits, you turned it into your professor, and the professor said, A++, this is good work. And then you continue on your timeline of possibilities and enter into the next electron shell, or the next highest realm, or the next highest level of sophistication, and the next highest dimension. So you do not have to experience a personal death in order to ascend. And our planet is not dying. This is a really important thing. This is not a disposable planet. So we treat our bodies very differently. If you think, oh, you know something? This body doesn't matter. You can bang it all up, you can scab it up, and then I'm just going to die, and then I'll be reborn into a nice, beautiful, perfect body. That's really different than if you think, this body is my vehicle for eternity. And I want to take good care of it. I want to keep it clean. I want to keep it pure, because this body will transform into its higher dimensional state. So when a caterpillar transforms into a butterfly, it doesn't die. It's not like we chop off the head of a caterpillar and then a butterfly comes out of its head and flies around. It's not like that at all. A caterpillar goes into its chrysalis and undergoes a transformation, and the cells of the caterpillar are transformed into the new cells of the butterfly. The caterpillar, we could say that it virtually dies, but it doesn't die. It transforms. This is what ascension is. When we take the physical matter of our physical body and we transform it into its higher dimensional state. Birth of a new dimension means the world of spirit and the world of matter are coming together. We are all transitioning and being born, along with a planetary consciousness, into the higher dimensional state that is the combination of spirit plus matter. So if we rearrange Einstein's famous equation of energy equals mass times the speed of light squared, so we've got energy balancing mass. What if we put energy plus mass on, but energy and mass on the same side of the equation? What do we get on the other side? And the answer is infinity. We get the Flying Rainbow Lasagne. We get totality. So we are moving into this realm where your consciousness will directly create reality with no intervening time, with no intermediaries. And this is why it's not appropriate for you to ask for a God, as an externalized sky god, a Jehovah, a Jesus, a Lord, to say, oh, someone else, please do this for me. Like, no, when I go into my studio, I don't say to someone else, please pick up that paintbrush and paint that thing red over there. I say, I am the artist. I pick up my paintbrush, I put the paint on my paintbrush, and then I make something red. And this is how we get to the next level where we can learn. We have been literally living in this, it's supposed to be a schoolhouse where we can learn through sending information out and having it bounce back to us, sending out actions and having it bounce back to us. We haven't been able to learn effectively for 15,000 years. Wow. So I am really looking forward to this present rearrangement where we will finally be able to do our proper studies in reality, in an unfettered way, sending out energy and receiving it, having it come back to us through the new oscillation called the Flying Rainbow Lasagne. Thank you so much for being with me on this journey. Please continue to give birth